Right. Good afternoon, almost I said grade 11s, grade 9s. Welcome to our class. Here we're going to discuss the answers to your revision exercise. So you can please also mark on your side to see how you've done now with the work that we've covered so far this term. And that will give you a good indication of whether you're on the right track with the accounting and with the price theory that we've discussed. Please, if you've got a question, raise your hand or just unmute yourself if I perhaps don't see it, and then I can answer your question for you. All right, so let's start with section A. Question 1.1 was fit column A to column B. So 1.1, a debtor is C. So you'll see here's the answers there. So you can just mark. C is an individual or business that owes debt to another individual or business. I would rather say money, but debt is probably fine. Number 2, what is the debtor's journal? That is number D, a subsidiary journal in which merchandise sold on credit is recorded from credit sales invoices. 3, credit sales is B, an agreement in which a buyer receives something of value now and agrees to pay the seller at a later date. 4, the debtor's allowances journal is number F, a book of first entry in which merchandise sold on credit and returned by the debtors are recorded. So the returned part there. And then the last one, the National Credit Act, number 1.5 is A, an act aimed at protecting consumers and producers and creating a fair credit market. So 1 mark each, and that is for 5 marks. Happy with that? Good. Let's move on to the journals. Now, I'm going to, maybe must we take it transaction by transaction, or shall we do, let's do the journal and I'll refer to the transaction. I think that might be a bit easier. Right, so you were given transactions and you had to complete the CRJ, the debtors journal, and the debtors allowances journal. And then it told us that we didn't have to close off the journal, so that's why you see that none of my journals have column totals. If you've done it, there's nothing wrong, but they didn't award any marks for that. Okay, so which transactions do we need to report in the CRJ in this exercise? The first one that must be recorded there was the transaction on the 12th. So if you've got your exercise with you, the 12th transaction said received a check from D. Hermans to settle his account in full. Now, can you see grade 9s that they didn't give us an amount at all? But if you go to your exercise, by the instructions and information, they gave us the list of debtors' balances. And there we saw H. Madola owed 4,500 and D. Hermans owed 2,650. So that's obviously the money that he was still owing from the previous month. So now they say received money or a check from him in full settlement of his account. We know most that full settlement means he's paying everything that he owes, and therefore we put the 2,650. We use that amount, so now he doesn't owe us anything. We put the amount in analysis of receipt because they said we received a check. That means that we received the money in the store. He brought the check or sent it to us. Then there was no other transaction on the 12th for the CRJ, so we draw a line, take the money to the bank, 2,650. Then we need to say, why did we get this money? What happened? The debtor paid us, and therefore the 2,650 is recorded in the debtors control column as well. The next transaction that should be in your CRJ is on the 26th. That transaction read, issued receipt to H. Majola for payment received from him 3,000 Rand. Now, they didn't give us a receipt number, but in the first transaction, they told us it was receipt 23. So then we know the next one must be 24. We received the money from H. Majola. They gave us the amount, 3,000 Rand. So we put it in our till. Check, is there another transaction on that day? No. So then we draw a line and take the money to the bank, 3,000 Rand. Then we ask ourselves, why did we get this money? Because the debtor paid his debt. So we put it in the debtors control column. Right, and then the last one on the 30th, cash sales of merchandise, 1,200 Rand. This is a normal cash sales transaction. CRR, the day the 30th, details cash sales, analysis of receipt, 1,200 Rand. I just quickly want to check that I add, oh, they didn't give us the cost of sales column. So in analysis of receipt, 1,200, bank 1,200, sales 1,200. So I only gave an amount for sales or a mark for sales. There should have been a cost of sales column, but if you perhaps put it in your sundry accounts, if any of you did it, then it would have looked like that. I will just add it there. Of not 1,200, I think it's 1,000. Let's quickly work out. Divided by 120 times 100, that's 1,000. So if you put the cost of sales there because there wasn't a column, well done for that. But that didn't count a mark at all. Right, so that is our cash receipts journal, and the reason why none of these amounts in debtors control are recorded in sales, because we didn't sell to them here. Here they only gave us the money for sales that we've done a long time ago on credit in the debtors journal. Okay, so that one was for 7 marks. Right, then we move on to the debtors journal. So which transactions were supposed to go into the debtors journal? The first one, on the first, where they said sold goods on credit to H. Majola for 1,200 Rand and issue invoice 45. So invoice 45, the day is the first, name of the debtor H. Majola, folio debtor number 1, sales 1,200. You had to go work out the cost of sales. What is the cost of sales? It is the markup they said that we used is 20%. So 1,200 times 100 divided by 120 will give you cost of sales of 1,000 Rand. Then if we go to the next one that should be in your debtors journal, was on the 25th, where they said credit sales of merchandise to D. Hermans, 750 Rand. So that credit sales tells you that it can't be in the CRJ, it must be in the debtors journal. So invoice 46, the day is the 25th, D. Hermans, folio, you can number them any number, they didn't give us numbers, 750 in sales, and if you work out your cost of sales, you get 625. And that is our debtors journal. Good, for 6 marks. Now, if we move on to the debtors allowances journal, now this is all the transactions where the debtors returned stock to the business, for whatever reason. Now, the 2 transactions that were supposed to be recorded here was on the 18th. That transaction was H. Majola returned some of the goods bought by him, 450 Rand, and credit note 21 was issued to him. So credit note 21, H. Majola, you must use the same folio number that you've used in your DJ. Debtors allowances 450. Remember that is basically replacing my sales column. And cost of sales you work out with the cost of sales transaction formula 375. Right, and then on the 27th cost, and now please watch out for this one. I hope you read carefully. This one said goods with a cost price of 560 Rand were returned by D. Hermans. So the cost price of the goods were 560 Rand. So you put that in your cost of sales column, and now you have to go work out your sales price. So how do you work out the sales price? If you have the cost price, you say 560 times 120 divided by 100, and then you work out your sales price, which is then for, or in your debtors allowances column. So that is why this one is worth 2 marks and the 560 is worth 1 mark. Right. Then this is basically the end of the 3 journals that they asked us to do. Do you have any questions on these answers, or something that doesn't make sense that I can explain to you again? All fine with that? Okay, so let's just move on. So there's journals. We're done with the journals. I see grade 9s. I just want to go back to the CRJ. In your answer sheet, there's a folio column in front of analysis of receipts. So you probably wrote next to D. Hermans, or you should have in the folio column D2 or whatever number you've given to the debtor, and by H. Majola, let's say D1, so as long as the numbers correspond, and there wouldn't be any folio number next to cash sales because we haven't dealt with a debtor there. I just see your answer sheet does have that in mine somehow disappeared. Right, then question 1.3. They asked us, determine the amount owed to the business by H. Majola at the end of the month. Now, I hope some of you got this right. Let's see how did we get to this amount. First of all, what did he owe in the beginning of the month? He owed 4,500. Then they said, then we sold to him for 1,200, so we added to the 4,500. Then we subtract the 450 rand that he returned as in the debtor's allowances journal, and then he made payment in the CRJ for 3,000 rand. He paid some of his debt. And then if we say 4,500 plus 1,200 minus 450 minus 3,000, that gives us 2,250. Okay. So this is what he now owes at the end of the month. Right, and that's worth 2 marks. Good. Then they asked us to analyze the transactions on the 1st and the 12th. So, and I've given you an example of how to do it. Let's see how we do this one. This one was a credit sale to the debtor on the 1st for 1,200. So how do we do that? Remember, we say we always work with an A part and a B part. The A part, we work with the sales amount, the big amount, and that's the 1,200. So what is the document, our source document for credit sales? It's a duplicate invoice. Why? The original one goes to the debtor, to the client. So our source document is duplicate invoice. Then we work with the sales amount. So if some of you might start with sales to say, okay, what happened here? We sold, so we receive, or that's an income to the business. So 1,200 under owner's equity, and my reason is sales. Then we ask ourselves, how did the sale take place? Was it cash sales or credit sales? We said it was credit sales. So did we get money to put in the bank? No, because the debtor is only going to pay us later. But that debtor owes us the money, and that is an asset to the business. Okay. So under assets plus 1,200, because the debtor's control increases. Okay, but then we need to go to the B part to say this 1,200 that we received in sales, or that we recorded as sales, as an income, that's not our profit, because long time ago we had to go buy the trading stock that we've just given to the debtor. Okay, so now we have to show that my trading stock asset has decreased with the cost price. So we work it out, mostly 1,200 times 100 and 100 divided by 120. That's your cost price, 1,000 rand. So my trading stock asset decreased with 1,000 rand. And then we need to say, whenever we sell, this cost price of the trading stock that we've just sold becomes an expense to the business. So in effect, you can see that we've only made 200 rand profit on the sale. Okay, 1,200 minus that 1,000. So that 1,000 rand, the cost price of the stock that we're selling or sold, that is our cost of sales expense. Good. So 1 mark for the amount, 1 mark, 1 mark, 1 mark, 1 mark. So this whole transaction was with 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 marks. Okay. And then on the 12th, the debtor paid his debt. So we issued a receipt. Therefore, the source document is a duplicate receipt. What do we do with all money that we receive? We put it in the bank. So my bank asset increased with 2,650, and then we ask ourselves, but why did we get this money? The debtor paid his debt. So if the debtor pays his debt, it means what he owes us is now less, and therefore our debtors control asset decreases. So under assets minus 2650, and my reason is debtors control decreases. Right, so you can see over here I've given a mark for the source document, but only 1 mark if all of this is correct and 1 mark if all of this is correct. So that gives you 12 marks. Right, so that brings us to the end of question 1 with all the accounting. If we move now on to the supply and demand graph for jeans, let me just turn over my page. They said use the information given below to draw the demand and supply curve for jeans. So they've given us the information, the price, quantity demanded, and quantity supplied. So if we look at demand, over here, let's just see at 120, quantity demanded was 500 because it's very cheap. They would like a lot. At 140, they demanded 400. At 160, they demanded 300, 180, 200, and at 200 Rand only 100 jeans. So that's our demand curve. I'd like you to write D here and D over here, but if you indicated demand, that's perfectly fine. You can give yourself 1 mark. Then the supply curve. Now that was just the opposite. Suppliers would supply a lot if they can get a lot of money for it. So if we have a look at this one, at 120 Rand, the suppliers are only willing to supply 100 items because they're not going to make a lot of profit. 140, 200, 160, 300, 180 Rand, they're willing to supply 400, and at 200 Rand, they're willing to supply 500 items. So then you connect those dots, and this is your supply curve. Okay. And then they said, okay, there's the equilibrium point. If you want to indicate that as well. So for 2.1, you can give yourself a mark for demand, supply, if you indicated equilibrium point, for price and quantity access. All right, so that's 5 marks. Then they ask us, I'll come back to this one at 2.4. Then they asked us to determine the equilibrium point, or price and quantity, which is the equilibrium point, and you can somewhere read it off nicely there. The equilibrium price is 160 Rand, and the equilibrium quantity is 300. Right, so then 2 marks there each. 2.3, they asked, define the law of demand, and what do we call this kind of relationship that exists between price and demand? So you could have either said the law of demand is if price is high, the higher the price, the lower the demand. So 1 mark, 1 mark. Or you could have said the lower the price, the higher the demand. That basically means the same thing. And what do we call this relationship between price and demand? We say that there is an inverse relationship, or a negative relationship between price and demand. So 2 marks for your definition of law of demand, and 1 mark for inverse, or I'll take negative slope or slant even, right? Okay, and then 2.4, I hope that you managed to get this one right. They said, on the completed graph, show an increase in the supply of jeans by the producer. So for some reason, maybe they found a new way of manufacturing jeans, or the raw materials became cheaper, or labor became cheaper, whatever the case might be, but now there is an increase in the supply of jeans. So what happens? The supply curve, remember this is the supply, the normal supply curve, the supply curve will move to the right. To the right. So anywhere here, if you've indicated wherever here, then it's correct. You can give yourself 2 marks as long as you've indicated that the supply curve moved to the right of your original supply curve. And normally what happens, if there's all of a sudden more products in the market, what is happening to the equilibrium point? Can you see? The equilibrium point drops from, let's say, if I see where this one crosses now with demand, it's about, the new equilibrium point is just under 450 at about 130 Rand, where the previous equilibrium point was 300 at 160 Rand. So what happens is, if there's more supply in the market, then normally the equilibrium price will drop. But there will be more demanded at that price. Okay, so that is then, so that's the final 2 marks. So that is then the total for the price theory is then 12 in total, and that gives us a final grand total of 50 marks for this revision exercise. Good, grade 9s. Are there any questions? Anything that you may be not sure of? You want me to explain again? How did it go? Did you manage well?
Yes, ma'am.
You did well. Kumu?
Yes, ma'am.
You did okay. All right. Who else is here? Galaxy number 6. How did it go? Let me just see if I can unmute you.
I have a question.
Yes.
On question 2, the demand curve and supply curve, must
Yes.
it be on the same graph or different graphs?
Normally, if they give you this schedule that they've given you in the exercise, where they indicate supply and demand together, because there's a price column, then demand, quantity demanded and quantity supplied, then they would expect you to draw it on one graph, because then it is easy for you to determine the equilibrium point. I know just from the schedule you can also determine the equilibrium point very, very easily. If they didn't look in this one, they actually gave you the answer sheet as well with one graph, so I would assume that we need to do it on one, but technically it's probably not wrong if you do it on two separate graphs. It's also fine.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank
Good.
you, ma'am.
Okay. Any other questions, grade 9s? Did you do all right? Are you on top of this work?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
also, can I ask on question 1.4?
Yeah.
Doesn't
Yes.
the debitors control increase?
Where? Which one?
Number 12.
Transaction.
Number 12.
Okay, transaction 1 on the first, or the one on the 12th?
The 12, ma'am.
Okay, now remember what happened here is the debtor is paying back some of the debt. He's settling his account or paying part of his account. So now it means his debt is less. He now, after this transaction, owes us less. So that's why debtors control decreases.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Does that make sense?
Yes,
Cool.
it does, ma'am.
Okay, grade 9s. That's then it for today. So you can now see more or less how you did and how you fared with this revision exercise. This is more or less something that you would expect if you were to write exams now. This is on this part of the work is basically what I would have asked. And maybe a here and there, 1 or 2 more theory questions. But if you can manage with this, then you can pat yourself on the back and say that you are on par and that you understand the work. Please let me know if there's anything that's unclear. And then what I'll do, maybe I've now recorded this, but maybe with the okay, but your answer sheet also didn't have the cost of sales in. I actually wanted to put that in, but that might confuse you. But yes, thank you for joining the class. The 3 of you, I think you were just 3. And then we'll chat soon again. Have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you, ma'am. You too.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye, ma'am.
Bye.